Welcome everyone to Gamer Melt. Today, Intel's 11th gen is looking better, the 6700 non-XT model update, AMD's desktop 5000 APU sold, Nvidia's new GPU series is here, and a 5600 XT can beat a 3090? Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, in a follow-up to our recent story about Intel's upcoming Rocket Lake CPUs. Like AnandTech, Hardware Lux was able to get a hold of Intel's upcoming 11700K, and they ran some benchmarks. This time though, the performance looks quite a bit different. When it comes to games, as you can see, the 11700K still loses to the 5800X in all except Battlefield 5, but it actually beats last gen's 10700K. When it comes to the professional workloads, we see something very similar as well. And finally, when we get to power draw, the 11700K looks better, but it still draws nearly 200 watts. Plus, AnandTech used an AVX 512 workload, and Hardware Lux mentions it constantly being at 190 watts, while AnandTech only noticed the 300 watts in short bursts. Testing methodology could be a factor here, but I guess we'll have to wait for more reviews first. Now, if you're getting bored of your daily routine, why not spice it up with today's sponsor? Blinkist, the app that makes reading easier than ever by condensing thousands of nonfiction books into just 15-minute snippets. That means you don't need a ton of time to learn something new every day. Plus, you have the option to either read it yourself or listen like an audiobook. To top it off, you get access to all of your books offline. Oh, and they now offer full audiobooks for those wanting to delve deeper, and members get them for up to 65% off. So don't wait. The first 100 people who go to Blinkist.com/gamermeld get unlimited access for 1 week to try it out. You'll also get 25% off on the full membership after, so make sure to check that out today. Next up for today, a surprise was recently found for AMD's upcoming RX 6700 non-XT model. If you've been following the channel, you know that so far we've seen the non-XT model with a pretty measly 6GB of GDDR6 memory. That's obviously a far cry from the 12GB 6700 XT. Well, in a new EEC filing by ASUS, they clearly show models with 12GB. What's interesting is that video cards already confirmed that third-party makers are working on 6GB variants, which means AMD either changed their plans or they're set to launch 2 models. The 6600 XT was already found with 12GB, so maybe it's moving down there? Either way, the 6700 non-XT model is set to be an interesting one. Next up, while AMD hasn't even announced their desktop Ryzen 5000 APUs yet, some have already made their way to eBay. The Ryzen 3 5300G is a quad-core desktop APU, and while it's only an engineering sample, the base clock is set at 3.5 GHz. The seller does point out potential issues with drivers as well as motherboard support for Cezanne being pretty poor. Either way, the CPUs have already sold out, so apparently most didn't care. What's really interesting is that the seller shared benchmarks in a video, and as you can see, it crushes other 4-core parts. Let's just hope AMD decides to sell their APUs to the DIY market this time. Next up for today, it looks like the first of Nvidia's new GPU series is here, specifically their CMP30HX mining card. As you can see, this is a gigabyte model, and it doesn't have any video output since miners don't use these cards for actually rendering a scene. Now, as the earlier leak suggested, the GPU is based on last gen's Turing architecture. According to video cards, it comes with 6GB of GDDR6 and should be around the 1660 super specs. Not only that, but apparently AIB partners have already begun mass production. This card is set to get around 26 megahashes per second in Ethereum, which is around what the 3060 gets after the mining algorithm cuts it in half. And speaking of, there were recent reports that miners had cracked the limitation from Nvidia and were getting the full mining rate from the card. Well, luckily those were wrong, as the mining was actually being done on another coin. With that said, someone may figure it out eventually, though it points out a problem with Nvidia's limiter. While Ethereum is the most profitable coin, other coins can certainly make a decent amount. Hopefully these new mining GPUs can help take the strain off of the RTX 3000 series. Then again, miners could just buy all of them and more if it still makes them money and is worth the risk. And lastly for today, we have a really interesting story from a new video by Hardware Unboxed. In it, they were testing all the generations of Ryzen CPUs, and during their tests, they discovered something pretty incredible. They found that AMD's GPUs are significantly faster than Nvidia's when CPU bottlenecked. Basically, Nvidia's GPU driver requires more cycles to get things done. In fact, at 1080p in Watch Dogs Legion, AMD's RX 5600 XT crushes Nvidia's RTX 3090 with up to a 2600X and even comes close using a 3600X. Of course, you may be thinking that no one would buy a 3090 and play at 1080p, which is true. But even at 1440p, the 5700 XT beats the 3090. Now, this is a really big deal because it has some big implications. For one, when gamers are looking to upgrade an existing system, going AMD could be the better option. Obviously, you don't want to intentionally bottleneck your system, but if you can't get a better CPU until later, it makes perfect sense. Second, it could change up how CPU benchmarks are done moving forward. Cheaper CPUs could look like a better option when benchmarked with AMD versus Nvidia. Before, most CPU tests were done with Nvidia cards because they were the fastest, but now that AMD's 6000 series is here, it could make more sense to use an AMD card to show the full potential. Oh, and if you were wondering, Intel's CPUs show a similar result. With that said, it seems to mostly be pronounced in the newer APIs that use more cores. But this is a big deal, and I definitely suggest checking out Hardware Unboxed's full video, which I will have in the description. They worked really hard on these benchmarks and definitely deserve the views. So while that does it for today, are you shocked by these results with Nvidia versus AMD, or is it really not a big deal just because it's a limited set of games and a limited circumstance? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you liked the video, make sure to subscribe, and as always, have a great day!